Hey everyone, it's November 26th. It's game 2 of the World Championship title match between reigning champion Ding Lijian from China and young, promising, very strong challenger Gukesh from India. Grandmaster Nikita Meshkovs, that's me. I'm going to make a recap of game 2. But before we jump to the game real quick, as you know, this video is sponsored by my friends from the Chessify platform. It's a platform where you can analyze games, you can use high-speed engines, and they have a lot of cool features. So check the link in the description. With my promo code MESHKOVS20 you can get 20% discount for the first purchase, so you're very welcome. Let's jump to the game, and as you know, yesterday Gukesh lost with white pieces, so today current world champion Ding Lijian played with white, and Gukesh was on the other side. He had to fight with black for the first time in the match, and he is 1 point behind the champion. So Ding Lijian started with king's pawn as well, and young challenger also used the same e-pawn, but he moved it not to e6 but to e5, and in a very traditional manner, white continued with knight f3, black plays knight c6, and current world champion decided to choose bishop c4. So after bishop c5, we're having a gioco piano type of positions. Usually it's a very slow battle, positional battle, strategic one, and obviously many options are possible here, but Ding Lijian plays d3. So after Gukesh responds immediately with knight f6, he plays knight c3, a move that is not the very top choice by popularity. So for instance, c3 is way more popular here, but knight c3 is one of the possibilities for white how to build up their strategy for the game. And I would say that knight c3 maybe is not that ambitious one, but you have to take into account the result of the match. So Ding Lijian is 1 point ahead of his opponent, and he has not a single reason in the world to take unnecessary risks, so he wants to keep his play under control and avoid unnecessary risks. So this is something what you have to understand when you're looking to the game. So in this position, Gukesh plays a6. He sort of creates a luft for the bishop, and in some cases maybe black also wants to play b5, but yeah, the main reason is to keep this bishop alive, because a7 f2 diagonal is perfect place for the dark square bishop. Ding Lijian plays a4, sort of preventing any possible activity on the queen side, and also fights for the space. Gukesh plays d6, and white continues with a short castle. So at this point, position even looks very symmetrical. If black makes a castle, then it's almost full symmetry. However, in this type of position, it could be very tricky, because you think that nothing really is happening, and both sides did not even cross middle of the board, and so-called demarcation line, and both sides are playing on their part of the board. But this feeling could be very, very tricky, because let's say as soon as one of the sides crosses the board with a move like bishop g4, it did not happen in the game, but just to illustrate, if black is the one who tries to play for the initiative and sort of eyeing for knight e4 idea to exploit this pin on the h5 d1 diagonal, then the game becomes very concrete. And after h3, I believe that most likely black has to retreat with the bishop back. So afterwards, if you try to stop this idea with move like g4, then position could become very messy pretty much in a couple of moves. And so with this type of a fight where black has a pin and they sacrifice the piece for 2 pawns, but still sort of plays with the initiative, it could be very double-edged, and I believe that this is a game for 3 results. So that's why you have to be very, very much concentrated and prepared at any moment of the game, because even though optically it looks like nothing is happening, but in reality both sides are waiting for their right moment to shine. So Gukesh plays prophylaxis like h6. I'll show you one example. Let's say if black would play a short castle, then bishop g5 would be possible, and in this case we can get similar type of position where black plays h6, and let's say after g5 we can get the same thing, but with reversed colors. So I don't think that world champion would go here, because there's absolutely no reason to take more risks, and I assume that he would try to play something else in case short castle would happen. But as Gukesh played h6, taking g5 square under control and preventing this sort of a pin, world champion plays bishop e3, a very solid continuation, and Gukesh plays bishop to e6. However, instead of bishop e6, if, for instance, black captures on e3 and okay, white has to take. So in this type of a strategic battle, one of the key elements for player to fight for the advantage is to be able to get some small advantage with every single trade. So by trading pieces, you're improving your position. Let's say with this trade, white gets really great play on the f file and also f pawn, which became an e pawn. It controls d4 square, so also maybe white has some prospects for the queen to go to the king side, and this is the way how to play. Let's say after bishop e6, white can play b3, stabilize the position, and after short castle play queen e1 with similar idea. That's, for instance, the way how Magnus Carlsen played against Daniel Naroditsky last year in 2023. And also, besides b3, knight d2 also is very possible. This comes from the game between Elizabeth Petz and Humpy Canaro from a recent tournament from Shymkent. Only a couple of months played before the World Championship match. So all of this type of fight would be possible, but Gukesh decided to choose bishop e6 and not change the structure yet. And yeah, in this moment, it's a big moment, because another important I would say, one of the most important elements in this type of strategic fight, besides traits, is ability to keep the tension and make some improvements rather than trading pieces immediately. Of course, you can trade pieces as well. For instance, by the way, a very fun fact that this position happened 6 times in practice before this game, and all the games were played last year in 2023, and I think almost all the games were on a very high level, pretty much played by top players. So I'll give you a couple of examples. So, for instance, Norderbeck Abdusatorov played it in a blitz game against Fabiano Caruana last year in Stavanger, and Norderbeck decided to take on c5 and then support the bishop with a knight. Also a very typical idea. So after queen d6 they traded, and he installed his knight on c4, relocated it to e3, and stabilized the position with b3. And after h5, it's sort of a balanced position. To be honest, I prefer black a little bit, but it's a long game, and both sides are extremely solid. Besides bishop c5, another example, for instance, Pragnananda played it against Giri, and he played bishop takes e6 with another idea. After fe6, we can say that, okay, f-file is open for black, but Prag decided to play an important follow-up of this idea, d4, and pretty much exploit the center. Queen d7 takes, queen d3, and after short castle trades bishops as well. And yeah, they had a very balanced middle game with mutual chances, but this is also something where the game could go. So besides these two captures, also white can keep the tension. That's what I've started with in the very beginning, and knight d5 also could be played, and it was played with by the same top GM, Prague. And in this game, it was played on the internet. After knight d5, black captured, f takes c3, and I think this is exactly type of position where you should be relatively happy with the outcome of the opening, because you have some space advantage on the queen side. Also, I do believe that this trade on e3 favors white, because they are, sort of having some potential activity on the king side of the board, and Denis Lazovic played bishop takes d5, ed5, and then retreated with a knight, transfer it to the king side, and yeah, they had a long game, but Prague managed to win. So you see that it could go any way, and the position is very rich. It has a lot of opportunities for both sides. And in this game, Dean Lejeune played very quickly a5. So I have no doubts about Ding knew this position, because he, I think, spent only a couple of minutes to get here, and pretty much blitzed out a5. And it's an interesting fact that already second game in a row, current world champion pushes a pawn as far as possible to get space advantage. And I do like this approach, which was pretty much invented by AlphaZero in a famous match against Stockfish back in 2017. And I think that yeah, this alpha 0 pawn indeed is a great investment in your position long term, because you squeeze your opponent and you get this long-term advantage that could be useful in a long run. So here Gukesh takes on c4, white captures on c4 as well, and Gukesh plays short castle. So I was curious about what happens if black captures on e3 and white recaptures as well. So as always, engine claims that position is equal, but if you're trying to understand this trade favors white or black with a human eye, I would say that it's again a bit easier to play with white, even though white has a pair of double pawns. And the reason is that both pawns on e-file, they're controlling all these four squares, d5, d4, f5, f4. And both knights are pretty much stuck to find a great spot to land. Maybe one day black knight can jump to c5, for instance, with this route. But the game is very concrete and strategic at the same time. So white has an interesting idea to play queen d1 to e2 and then even sack a pawn with the queen c4 follow-up. Alternatively, as I already mentioned earlier, queen e1 with some queen g3 or queen h4 or knight h4 is a typical way how to play this out. So this would be very interesting to see, but Gukesh decided to make a short castle, very understandably, and at this moment the game become very boring, I have to say that. Also, another key moment, instead of short castle and bishop takes e3, was bishop b4. I think objectively it was the best option for black, with the idea to take on c3 and take on e4. So this is also something that usually black plays in this type of positions, also attacking the a5 pawn. And I'm very sure that Ding was very well prepared against this follow-up, because in this moment white has to go knight d5. So for instance, if black captures the pawn, then it should finish pretty badly for them, because white gets an easy play jumping to f5 outpost. And if black tries to stop it with g6, then the drawback of this move is that knight on f6 is not protected so good. And if black captures, then once again white takes. And even though our knight on h4 is hanging at the moment, but black has some issues, especially with the bishop on a5 and knight on c6. So we can continue with something like knight d4 takes, 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 and takes. And in the end of the line, it should be slightly better for white, and I'm pretty sure this position was in Ding's analysis. But yeah, bishop b4 did not happen. And also I wanted to point out that after knight takes c4, white would have to play queen d3, and I've checked this position with the engine a bit. It's actually very tricky, because bishop could easily get stuck here, especially as white has this type of c3 b4 ideas, and it's not easy to coordinate and find all the right sequences to not to lose some material. And if black plays something like knight c5, then queen can jump to f5, and still all the same ideas are in the air. While, yeah, after knight e6, it's according to the engine, he's just making fun of us, but it's completely leveled. However, I do believe that something was prepared here by Ding, and yeah, this looks to me like a very risky position for black, because certainly white has a great control, and yeah, they have a full compensation for the sacrificed pawn. But anyways, bishop b4 did not happen as much as bishop e3, and Gukesh played short castle, and Ding made a very pragmatic decision at this point. He just traded and stabilized his position with b3, and another trade happened next. So rook a d8 was played by a young challenger, and yeah, it seems that like nothing happens in this game, and it should finish soon. However, back in 2013, maybe 2015, when Magnus Carlsen was on his way to the top, he has shown us a lot of times that you can squeeze your opponent with very, very small advantage, and for instance, this space advantage on the queen side, and especially this slightly vulnerable pawn on c5, and maybe also pawn on e5, could become a problem in the long run. And even though position is very, very balanced, but white has some tiny strategic advantage. And yeah, so here white and black, both sides have interesting ways how to continue the fight. So for instance, white could have played knight e1 with the idea to relocate the knight to d3 immediately, and I'll give you just an example where the game could have gone here. Let's say after rook d1, and knight a5. It seems that white just sacrificed the pawn for no reason, but here we go. Knight comes to d3, and both pawns are under attack, so you can't control both of them. And yeah, let's say if you give the pawn back with something like rook d8, then I get the pawn back, and we have this type of endgame where I would say that white still has a little bit of strategic advantage, but if black is very, very precise with king f8 and then run with the king to the center as quick as possible, then they're managed to hold the balance in the position. But Ding decided to play rook dc1, a very counterintuitive move on the one hand, but there's a clear point, because so he claims that there is no ways to invade to his part of the board. At the moment, he's controlling the field very well, and his idea is just to transfer his knight from f3 to d3 in the later stage of the game. Pretty much that's what happened. Gukesh plays very energetically with knight d4, and white plays knight e1, rook d6, king f1, g6, and rook comes to d1. So at this point, world champion is, slowly improves his position with f3 and king f2, h5. They can't do anything immediately, but they're making those small improvements and look into opponents' eyes and like clarifying what are your intentions, what you want to do you want to risk or something. But of course, this is a world championship title match, and both players are extremely experienced, and they are, trying not to take too much risks for no reason. And with a move like h4, still the game would be open, and pretty much you can shuffle your pieces here and there almost forever. But at this point, Dink plays knight e2, and Black retreats with a knight, and Dink plays knight c3. So maybe he was still a little bit provoking his young opponent to take on d1, and then after knight d1 there is knight a5 capture. However, it requires just to calculate the sequence of moves precisely, because after rook a5, rook d1, rook c5, in the end of the line, both pawns are under attack, and pretty much white is much better. So for this reason, rook d1 did not happen in the game, and instead Gukesh thought for a little bit and then played knight d4, and they repeated position for the second time, and after knight d4, draw was agreed by a threefold repetition. I think that draw is a good result for both players at this point of the match, because Ding still is leading by 1 point, and Gukesh made a solid draw without pretty much without any problems with Black. So tomorrow they're having game 3, and afterwards is going to be a rest day. So I think that Gukesh will try to fight tomorrow and score back. And we'll see how it goes tomorrow. Thank you very much for your attention, and see you soon.